There is a lie you have been told, a comforting lie that cradles the intellect and soothes the ego. You have been led to believe that stupidity is a lack of information, a simple gap in knowledge that can be filled with the right book or the right teacher. This is not only incorrect, it is a dangerous illusion that keeps you imprisoned. I am here to tell you that what we call stupidity is something far more profound and far more terrifying in its implication. It is not an absence of light, but an active force, a pervasive pressure that operates within the very fabric of human consciousness, clouding perception and distorting truth. You have felt its weight, even in your moments of greatest certainty. In this encounter, we will uncover the nature of this hidden influence, and in doing so, we will touch upon the very principle of your own liberation from it. Prepare to look directly at what has been silently governing thought, and to discover what lies beyond it. To understand, this is to awaken from a collective trance. We move through our days believing that if we only knew more, if we had the right data, the correct instructions, we would act wisely. We scroll through endless streams of information. We accumulate certificates and accolades. We fill our minds with facts and opinions, and yet we find ourselves and witness others making decisions that are patently against our own good, against reason, against harmony. This is the first clue that we are not dealing with an empty vessel, but with a filled one, a vessel filled with a substance that actively resists the clear, penetrating light of truth. This force is not ignorance, it is a counterfeit intelligence. It is the mental noise that convinces you that your anger is justified, your fear is prudent, your prejudice is logical, and your separation from others is wisdom. It is the voice that narrates your life from a place of lack and competition, making the selfish choice seem like the only sane one. Consider the simple daily moment of irritation. You are cut off in traffic. The pure fact is a metal object changed its vector in proximity to yours. Yet, in an instant, a whole narrative erupts. A story about the other driver's character, their intentions, their disrespect toward you. This story carries heat. It tightens your muscles. It may alter your own driving for the next several minutes. Where did that story come from? It was not the event. The event was neutral. It came from a pre-existing reservoir of thought, a reactive pressure within consciousness itself that instantly interprets the world through a lens of threat, judgment, and personal offense. That is the active force at work. It takes a neutral reality and spins it into a drama of stupidity, both in the other driver, whom you now deem a fool, and in yourself as you engage in a mental battle that drains your peace. This is not a lack of knowing the rules of the road. It is an invasive knowing of something else entirely, a knowing of conflict. Look at the patterns of your own life, the recurring problems. You know intellectually what might resolve them. You know that patience is better than fury, that honesty is better than deceit, that generosity is better than hoarding. Yet, time and again, a compelling pressure pushes you toward the very thing you know is unwise. It feels like your own thought, your own clever rationale. This time, getting angry will make them listen. This small deception will prevent a headache. If I don't look out for myself, no one will. This is the genius of the force. It impersonates you. It presents its distorted logic as your own survival mechanism. It is not that you lack the knowledge of a better way. It is that a turbulent, persuasive current within the field of thought itself sweeps your awareness into its flow and makes the unwise choice feel inevitable, even righteous. This force operates on a global scale just as it does in the parking lot. Humanity possesses the knowledge, the science, the resources, and the sheer creative brilliance to solve its great crisis. We know the solutions to poverty, to ecological degradation, to conflict. And yet, we do not implement them. Why? Because a deeper, collective pressure of consciousness, this active force, subverts that knowledge. It turns solutions into ideologies, cooperation into competition, and abundance into a concept of scarcity. It cleverly divides us into factions, each convinced of its own superior intelligence, each viewing the other as fundamentally foolish. The problem is not a lack of brilliant minds or good ideas. The problem is a static interference in the signal, a noise that corrupts the transmission of pure principle into human action. This is why spiritual work has never been about adding more to the mind. It has always been about subtraction, about stillness, about the profound, and sometimes terrifying silence that allows this noisy, active force to be seen for what it is. When you sit quietly, attempting to meditate or pray, what rises to resist you? Not blankness, but a frenzy of thought, replays of old conversations, plans for tomorrow, worries, fantasies, judgments. That resistance is not you forgetting to be spiritual. It is the vibration of this force becoming visible. Your very attempt to be still highlights its activity. It fights for its life, because its life depends on the constant motion of reaction and interpretation. To see this is the beginning of freedom. You start to recognize that the thoughts which bring anxiety, which breed conflict, which cloud simple goodness, have a certain quality, a certain taste. They are not your native intelligence. They are a kind of psychic weather passing through the atmosphere of consciousness. Seeing this force as active changes everything. It means you are not battling your own stupidity, trying to fix a broken mind. You are learning to discern between the static and the signal. You are learning to withdraw the faith and belief you have placed in this noisy narrative. When the convincing voice of resentment speaks after a slight, you can, in a moment of grace, recognize it as merely that, a voice, a force, not a truth. That recognition creates a crack in its dominion. In that crack, something else can come through. Not a better thought from the same source, but a different kind of knowing entirely, one that comes from silence and not from noise. This knowing does not argue with the force, it sees it, and in that pure seeing, the spell is broken for a moment. The reaction dissolves. You are left not with a clever retort, but with peace. You are left not with a winning strategy, but with understanding. This is the practical, daily miracle to encounter the world not through the filter of this active, distorting pressure, but from a place prior to it. The journey is not one of becoming smarter, but of becoming utterly still, so that what you are, beneath the terrifying and clever theory of stupidity, can be revealed. This is the insidious nature of the pressure. It is not localized to one corner of the mind or one type of person. It is as pervasive as the air we believe we are breathing independently. We imagine our consciousness to be a private room, our thoughts uniquely our own, our perspectives self-created. This is the fundamental illusion. In truth, we are immersed in a shared atmosphere of thought, a collective consciousness that hums with specific frequencies: fear, desire, judgment, separation. This atmosphere exerts a constant, subtle pressure, shaping our perceptions as surely as the deep ocean shapes the form of every creature within it. We do not hear this hum as foreign. We hear it as the soundtrack of our own being, the very voice of our rationality. This is why two people, each convinced of their own clear-mindedness, can look at the same set of facts and see opposing, irreconcilable truths. It is not the facts that differ. It is the pressure of the collective atmosphere interpreting through them, bending the light of reality into a spectrum of conflict. You can feel this pressure in the sudden tightness of anxiety when you consider stepping outside a social norm, even a trivial one. You sense it in the unexamined assumptions you inherit from your family, your culture, your profession, assumptions about success, about security, about what is possible and what is not. These are not your original ideas, any more than the language you speak is your original invention. They are the currents within the pervasive medium, and you have been floating in them since birth. When you feel a reflexive cynicism toward a gesture of kindness, when you default to suspicion before openness, when you feel that vague sense of lack that sends you scrolling for something to buy or to consume, you are not manifesting your own deep nature. You are responding to the atmospheric pressure of a consciousness founded on the belief in lack, in threat, in me versus you. This pressure is so total, so ever-present, that it convinces you it is reality itself. It defines the boundaries of the world you perceive. Consider the workplace not as a collection of individuals, but as a field of this pressure. A team meets to solve a problem. The pure, unformed solution exists in principle, waiting to be realized. But what happens? The pressure manifests as the unspoken politics, the desire to be seen as the smartest, the fear of proposing something that might fail, the ingrained hierarchies that give more weight to one voice over another, the past grievances that color the present moment. The collective intelligence is compromised not because the people lack IQ, but because the atmospheric pressure of the shared consciousness in that room is one of separation and self-preservation. The solution that emerges is often a compromised, diluted version of what could have been, a testament not to a lack of brain power, but to the pervasive interference of this field. Everyone leaves feeling the friction, the stupidity of the process, yet attributing it to others' flaws, never perceiving the invisible medium in which they were all swimming. This pressure is what turns a simple difference of opinion into a seething feud. It takes the raw material of diverse perspective, which in truth could combine into a greater understanding, and processes it through the filter of the collective ego. What comes out is polarization. Two sides, each now more rigid, more convinced, more invested in the rightness of their position as a part of their very identity. The pressure has done its work, transforming potential wisdom into entrenched stupidity. You see it in family arguments where the original issue is long forgotten, but the charged field of resentment remains, dictating every interaction. You see it in your own internal debates where one part of you argues fervently for a course of action based on fear, and another argues for something based on love, and you feel torn as if between two selves. Those are not your true selves. They are waveforms within the pervasive pressure, the inherited frequencies of conflict playing out in the auditorium of your awareness. To become aware of this atmosphere is the first shocking step toward freedom. It is to realize that much of what you call thinking is not thinking at all, but a kind of psychological weather you are reporting on. When you feel a surge of tribal anger reading the news, that is not your soul's response. It is the pressure wave of the collective consciousness moving through you, and you, identifying with it, call it your righteous indignation. The practice, then, is one of sensitive discernment. It is to begin to notice the texture of your thoughts. The thoughts born of this pervasive pressure have a distinct quality. They are repetitive. They are fear-based. They seek to compare and defend. They carry a charge of past or future. They feel heavy, constricting, personal. They are the noise of the world mind. In moments of quiet, you may sense this directly. Sit and try to be still. The pressure will immediately assert itself as a torrent of mental activity, plans, memories, commentaries, anxieties. This is not a failure of your meditation. It is a revelation. You are witnessing the ceaseless churning of the pervasive pressure, the very substance of the collective dream from which you are beginning to awaken. The thrill, the engagement here, is in becoming a silent witness to this vast phenomenon. You are no longer solely a creature within the atmosphere. You are that which can perceive the atmosphere. And in that perception, a profound shift occurs. You are no longer claiming the weather as your own creation. You see the storm of stupid, reactive thought for what it is, a conditioned, impersonal force passing through, and what you are, the silent awareness witnessing it, remains untouched by its drama. From this point of recognition, you can navigate the world not as a puppet of the pervasive pressure, but from a place of deeper principle, allowing a different kind of intelligence, one not of the atmosphere, but of the universe itself, to inform your every step. This pervasive pressure, this atmospheric noise of the collective mind, has but one ultimate aim: to distort reality. It does not merely create static, it actively filters, twists, and reconstructs the pure, present, moment truth into a narrative it can control. This is the core of its operation, the distortion of perception and truth. You are not living in a world of facts. You are living in a world of interpretations, and these interpretations are largely pre-fabricated by this force. It stands between you and what is, like a warped lens that bends every ray of light before it reaches your eye. You then react not to the light, but to the distortion, believing it to be the only reality. The thrill of this discovery lies in realizing that your greatest suffering, your most confounding conflicts, stem not from life itself, but from this profound and convincing misperception. See it in the most intimate of human experiences, relationship. You look at your partner, your friend, your parent. In a clear moment, you see them, a being of infinite complexity and potential, a soul. Then the distortion activates. It projects the past onto them, that thing they said last week, that habit that irritates you, that old wound they inadvertently touch. Suddenly, you are no longer seeing as them. You are seeing a character in your personal story, a collection of traits and judgments. The living truth of the person is obscured by the overlay of your mental narrative. The argument that follows is not between two people, but between two sets of distortions, each party convinced they are seeing the real other. The force thrives on this. It convinces you that your distorted perception is the truth, that your story about them is more real than their own being. This is the essence of its tyranny. Or consider your perception of yourself. The undistorted truth of you is consciousness itself, aware, capable, at peace. But the lens of the collective pressure distorts this into a finite, fragile character, the story of your failures, your shortcomings, your past regrets, your future anxieties. You walk through a day carrying this distorted self, image like a weight, and you interact with the world through it. You hesitate to speak your mind because the distortion says, you are not articulate enough. You avoid a creative pursuit because the distortion whispers, you are not truly talented. You see not your own capacity, but a caricature painted by the pervasive pressure of a world that believes in limitation and comparison. Every moment of self, doubt is a triumph of this distorting mechanism, a successful substitution of a painful falsehood for a liberating truth. The news you consume is a masterclass in this distortion. An event occurs, a complex geopolitical shift, a social development. The pure event is multifaceted, a tapestry of cause and effect, of human hope and fear. But the pressure of collective consciousness, through its various outlets, instantly processes this event. It simplifies, it polarizes, it assigns heroes and villains. It fits it into a pre-existing narrative of conflict. You are then presented not with the event, but with an interpretation designed to trigger a specific response of fear, outrage, tribal loyalty. You feel you are engaging with the world, but you are only engaging with a distortion. Your emotional and mental energy is recruited to fuel a narrative you did not create, all while believing you are forming an informed opinion. This is the subtle hijacking of your own capacity to see. Even your physical senses are not immune. You look at a tree. In a rare moment of clarity, you may simply see its majesty, its silent being, its intricate life. But almost instantly, the distortion machine wires to life. It labels it oak tree. It compares it, not as large as the one I saw yesterday. It assesses it for utility. That branch might fall in a storm. It recalls a memory. I climbed a tree like that as a child. The direct, unmediated perception of the tree is lost, buried under a pile of associated thoughts. You are no longer in communion with the tree. You are in communion with your thoughts about the tree. The world becomes a dim reflection seen through the dusty glass of conceptualization. This is how the Force ensures you live in a mental replica of reality, not reality itself. The spiritual imperative, then, is not to build a better, smarter story. It is to shatter the lens itself. It is to cultivate those moments where the distortion fails and pure perception flashes through. It happens in a crisis, sometimes when the mind is shocked into silence, and you act with a clarity that later astonishes you. It happens in profound awe before nature, where, for an instant, the commentary stops. It happens in deep, selfless love, where you see another being without the filter of your own needs. These are not mystical exceptions. They are glimpses of your natural state, operating without the intermediary of the distorting pressure. The practice is vigilant discernment. You must begin to question every reactive thought, every strong conviction, every emotional charge. Ask, in the midst of irritation, is this actually true, or is this the distortion speaking? In the grip of fear, am I perceiving the reality of this moment, or a projected story of catastrophe? This questioning creates a sacred pause. In that pause, the identification with the distortion weakens. You start to see the thought as a thought, the emotion as a passing weather pattern within the distorted atmosphere. You cease to grant it the authority of truth, and as you do, something miraculous occurs. The grip of the distortion loosens. The warped lens begins to clear. You start to perceive not from the turbulent surface of collective consciousness, but from the depths of your own silent awareness. From there, what you see is no longer a threat to be managed or a resource to be consumed, but a manifestation of a unified, intelligent wholeness. Your actions then arise not from distorted reaction, but from a clear seeing of what is. And in that alignment, the very concept of stupidity evaporates, for you are no longer interfacing with a world of illusion, but collaborating directly with truth. This is the critical pivot, the moment where theoretical understanding meets the undeniable data of your own life. You have glimpsed the pervasive pressure and seen its power to distort, but the intellect may still whisper. That is for others, the truly unenlightened. My convictions are different. My certainty is earned. This is the final, most cunning trick of the Force, to convince you that it is not operating within your own moments of greatest assurance, to recognize its influence there is to pull the rug from under its entire empire. Your certainty is its favorite disguise. The thrill here is not in discovering you are wrong about things. It is in discovering that the very feeling of being right, that solid, satisfying, unquestioned conviction, is often the primary symptom of the force's activity within your own consciousness. Think of the last time you were in an argument, a real one, where heat rose in your chest. In that moment, your position felt unassailable. Your logic was clear. Your points were just. The other person's folly was evident. That feeling of crystalline certainty, of righteous clarity, is precisely what you must examine. That heat, that rigidity, that absolute lack of doubt, that is the signature of the force, not the signature of truth. Truth, in its pure state, does not need defense. It does not generate heat. It simply is. The fervor, the need to prove, the internal shouting that drowns out any whisper of another perspective. This is the noise of the collective pressure masquerading as your own brilliant insight. It has hijacked your intelligence and is using it as a weapon to maintain separation. Your very certainty is the prison wall, convincing you that you are free because you are passionately defending your corner of the cell. Consider your most cherished beliefs about yourself, the stories you hold as foundational truth. I am someone who can't handle public speaking. I have always been bad with money. I need my morning coffee to function. People like me don't succeed in that field. These are not neutral observations. They are crystallized certainties. They feel like self-knowledge, the bedrock of your identity. Yet, each one is a monument to the force's past victory. A moment of anxiety in a school play, processed through the distorting pressure, becomes the immutable law. I am anxious at public speaking. Every subsequent experience is filtered through this law, reinforcing it until it feels as certain as gravity. This certainty then governs your behavior, limiting your choices long after the original moment has passed. The force does not just live in your reactive anger. It lives most comfortably in these silent, unquestioned treaties you have made with limitation, agreements you are certain are simply the way you are. Look at your daily routines and preferences. You are certain you dislike a certain food, a certain genre of music, a certain type of person. But when did you last actually experience that thing fresh, without the memory of the past judgment? The certainty of your dislike is a pre-recorded program running automatically. It saves you the trouble of perception, but at the cost of locking you out of the present moment. It creates a world that is familiar but small, predictable but dead. This is the force's trade. It offers you the comfort of certainty in exchange for the vibrancy of direct, unknown life. And you accept because the certainty feels like safety, like knowledge, like you. Even in your spiritual or ethical pursuits, this mechanism is at work. You become certain of a teaching, a path, a political stance. The initial opening hardens into a position. You now have a flag to fly, an identity as the one who knows. This certainty separates you from those who fly different flags. It can make you compassionate in theory, but dismissive in practice, loving in concept, but rigid in conversation. The force is indifferent to the content of the belief. It only cares that the belief becomes a solidified certainty, because all certainty rooted in thought becomes a point of separation, a fracture in the wholeness of understanding. Your heartfelt conviction that you are on the side of light can, through this process, become the very wall that blocks the light from shining through you unconditionally. To see this is to engage in the most subtle and fearless form of self-inquiry. It requires you to doubt your doubts and, more terrifyingly, to doubt your certainties. When you feel that surge of, I am right, you must learn to pause and look not at the content of your rightness, but at the feeling of it. Observe the bodily tension, the mental closing off, the subtle aggression. That is the footprint of the force. You are not being asked to become wishy-washy or to abandon discernment. You are being invited to transfer your allegiance from the feeling of psychological certainty to the quiet, knowing that comes from beyond thought. The latter has a different texture. It is calm, it is open, it is often compassionate, and it does not need to defeat anything to exist. Start with small things. You are certain the quickest route is down Main Street. Take the side street instead. You are certain your colleague intended to slight you. Approach them as if they did not. You are certain you will not enjoy the event. Go as if for the first time. In these tiny rebellions against your own certainty, you create cracks in the facade. You allow a sliver of raw, uninterpreted reality to touch you. You discover that the certainty was not protecting you, it was only protecting itself. And in the space where a certainty once stood, you may find not confusion, but a quiet intelligence that needs no banner, that operates with a flexibility and grace that the rigid force could never mimic. This is how you begin to disarm it, not by fighting the thoughts, but by withdrawing your faith from the feeling of certainty that glues those thoughts into a fortress you call me. When the fortress is seen as an illusion, the territory it was built to defend, your true being, is revealed not as a set of convictions, but as a boundless, alive, and ever-present awareness that was there before the first certainty was ever formed. If you have followed this far, you stand at the precipice of a great unraveling. You have seen the active force, felt the pervasive pressure, recognized the distortion of truth, and even identified its hidden hand in your own certainty. Now we must ask, what is this? If it is not you, yet it operates through you, what is its nature? We must uncover the hidden governing principle of thought itself. This is not an academic exercise. It is the key to the prison door. The force is not random chaos. It is a system, a self-perpetuating logic with a single foundational premise at its core. Every thought born of it, every reaction, every distorted perception is a mathematical outcome of this one flawed axiom. The thrill here is in discovering the source code of your own suffering, the first domino in a chain that has been falling for a lifetime. To see this principle is to see the engine of the entire illusion. This governing principle is the belief in separation as the fundamental reality. It is the unquestioned assumption that you are an isolated consciousness, a thinker housed in a body, looking out at a world of other separate objects and beings. From this one seed, this primary distortion, the entire tangled forest of the stupid mind grows. The pressure is the psychic atmosphere of a billion beings believing this to be true. The distortion is the perception of a world fractured into subjects and objects. Your certainty is the desperate defense of your particular fragment of the whole. Every thought that carries fear, judgment, lack, envy, pride, or anxiety is a branch growing from this root. It is the mind's entire operating system, and until you see it as a program running and not as reality itself, you are doomed to experience its output as your life. Watch it in the simplest interaction. You walk into a room of strangers. The immediate, almost imperceptible flicker of thought, how do I appear to them? Who here is a threat? Who here is useful? Who here is like me? This is the governing principle in real time. It scans the unified field of the room and instantly divides it into a calculus of separation. Me versus them, friend versus foe, safe versus unsafe. This is not wisdom. It is the automated protocol of a system whose core directive is to protect the separate self. It governs your posture, your smile, what you choose to say. You believe you are being social. But you are often managing the perceived risks and opportunities of a fundamentally separate existence. This principle governs your most profound grief and your pettiest irritations. The grief at loss, what is it but the anguish of a separated self, feeling a connection it believed was external severed? The irritation in traffic, what is it but the separate self feeling its will, its territory, its progress impeded by another separate self? The system interprets all events through this lens. A neutral world event becomes a political battle because the principle of separation must create sides. A personal failure becomes a crushing identity crisis because the separate self feels its worth has been attacked. Even your aspirations are governed by the desire for more wealth, more status, more love. Is the separate self's attempt to fortify its position in a seemingly hostile universe of other separate selves, all competing for resources. This is the hidden logic of the madness. Your very stream of consciousness is its broadcast. The ceaseless inner narration, I like this, I dislike that, I remember, I plan, I want, I fear, is the running commentary of the separate self, constantly measuring, comparing, and evaluating its position relative to everything else.